Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with the midweek update in the world of cannabis. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and then take advantage whenever you feel ready. And we're going to start with the big news that we got this week out of Canopy Growth, as they're introducing a new entity called Canopy USA. And so this is a very complicated strategy that I'm still trying to wrap my head around, but apparently this strategy helps establish an industry-leading, premium-focused brand powerhouse. Now, isn't that a lot of corporate buzzwords in one go? And will bring many of the US assets that Canopy already has ownership in, like Acreage, Jetty, and Wana brands under one roof. And why does this exclude TerraSend? I'm not exactly sure, but as of right now, just wanted to share this from CEO David Klein, sharing how we're unleashing the full potential of Canopy in this very dull and read right from the page press release. But this comes as of October 25th, 8 a.m., so basically yesterday.
Canopy's goal is to become the leading premium branded cannabis company in North America.
Yeah, good luck.
The key to achieving this goal is winning in the largest and fastest growing cannabis market in the world, the United States. We recognize that state-by-state legalization continues at a fever pace, and existing state-level markets in the U.S. are growing rapidly, building to what experts say will be an over $50 billion industry in 2026. Over the past few years, we've laid the groundwork to win in the U.S. through arrangements with Acreage, Jetty, and Wana, along with our investments in TerraSend. Our vision was that these businesses would someday operate as one company. To achieve this, we've created a U.S. holding company, Canopy USA, that will bring the power of Acreage, Jetty, and Wana together under one umbrella, creating a strong North American cannabis company with a collection of powerful brands that have established traction across key U.S. markets. Going forward, Canopy USA will look for opportunities to leverage best-in-class capabilities across each of these businesses to unlock value for our consumers, create profitable growth, and drive value for our shareholders. Canopy USA will also look for ways to collaborate with existing single-state and multi-state operators to build a stable and sustainable cannabis market across the U.S. In the next few months, Canopy shareholders will have an opportunity to vote on a proposal to create a new class of exchangeable shares, which would allow all shareholders the opportunity to self-assess their level of comfort with Canopy's exposure to the U.S. cannabis market. We've also worked with Constellation Brands to enter an agreement whereby Constellation has indicated its support for the creation of Canopy USA.
Sounds like more
and an intent to convert its ownership of Canopy into exchangeable shares, facilitating a clear path for Canopy to more immediately capture the U.S. growth opportunity. Importantly, upon completion of these transactions, we intend to consolidate Canopy USA's financial results into Canopy's financial statements, enabling us to better highlight the value of these U.S. assets for our investors. Over time, we expect Canopy USA to become a core pillar of Canopy's value proposition, making up a significant share of the consolidated company's revenue mix and enhancing our growth potential. Once we close all of the announced transactions, and as we continue to improve focus in our Canadian cannabis business,
take a long time.
We expect Canopy's global cannabis business to be profitable on a consolidated adjusted EBITDA basis. This is an exciting next step for Canopy as we look to realize our vision to unleash the power of cannabis to improve lives. So with that, stay tuned for more exciting news. We're just getting started.
Oh, we will. And no doubt, including Acreage, Jetty, and Wana's financial statements under Canopy's will hopefully help Canopy burn less cash flow and hopefully make them profitable one day. Obviously, if TerraSend was in there, that would help them too. But regardless, how are they going to go about this? We don't necessarily know, but they have provided a lot of detail in these press releases. So just going to share them with you, as this one comes from Global Newswire. Constellation Brands announces plan to convert common stock holding into Canopy Growth. And so basically more detail on what he just featured near the end of that. Canopy Growth announces plans to consolidate all U.S. cannabis assets into a single entity, Canopy USA, creating a U.S. holding company and exchangeable share structure designed to enable Canopy USA to trigger full ownership of U.S. cannabis investments and capitalize on U.S. cannabis market opportunities. So it seems like putting Acreage, Jetty, and Wana brands into one new entity that is a subsidiary of Constellation. Constellation Brands intends to transition existing common share ownership interest in Canopy growth into new exchangeable shares, protecting Constellation shareholder value while retaining an interest in Canopy growth through non-voting and non-participating shares. Share ownership transition and surrender of Canopy growth warrants is aligned with Constellation's focus on core beer and wine and spirits businesses and capital allocation priorities, emphasizing a strong financial foundation, reinvestment in its core businesses, and return of value to its shareholders. And so while that's a lot of corporate speak to unpack, leaving me still very confused, I just get the feeling that Constellation Brands, through its indirect wholly owned subsidiaries, Greenstar Canada Investment Limited Partnership and CBG Holdings LLC, who have entered into this consent agreement with Canopy Growth, are basically just saying, fuck it, we've lobbied enough, let's try and force Congress's hand. And so I don't know, just thinking out loud here, but there's a bit more information on the details of the transaction here if you wanted to pause to read. Otherwise, you can grab the whole link below if you wanted to get more information out of this. Well, I did find this story from Matt Lemairs, who often writes for MzBizDaily, although I've not had the time to go through it. And so as I pulled this off today, I just wanted to share it, highlighting the article, Canopy Growth speeding entry into the U.S. cannabis market, but full approval might take time. And so what Matt shares, my story on the big Canopy news today, highlights an extremely important detail that's flying under the radar. And so I haven't even read through this, but I will put the link below. It seems, though, that the detail that is not added into these press releases is that full approval of one of the key details might stretch into late calendar 2023 and early calendar 2024. So what else is new? And while that news might make you want to throw up in your mouth a little bit, if we've learned anything over the last few years as cannabis investors, is the importance of patience, as real good things do take time. And so is it possible that Canopy is making this announcement because they know something that we don't off of the news from the White House that we got a few weeks back? I don't know, that is still speculation, but wanted to share this interesting take from Brady Cobb, as he said probably just a coincidence that Canopy scrapped all their Canadian retail the same week that Biden announced the rescheduling process. Just hype, nothing to see here onward. And so again, I do agree with Brady that there's likely more going on behind the scenes that we just don't know yet, but this is again off the news from Todd Harrison, sharing new company, Canopy USA, to buy Acreage Holdings, Jetty, and Wana. Canada's Canopy triggers U.S. pot deals without legalization, apparently in word, but we'll have to see how this plays out. Canopy growth shares rise 3.1% in U.S. pre-market trading off of this news. And so with that, a little bit more on that development from Dennis Rudev as Cantor shares their recent thoughts on the Canopy growth news. And so here's some insights from Cantor Fitzgerald on the recent development, and if you're as confused as I am, definitely worth pausing to read. It's trying to ascertain Steez's endgame post today's announcement, unpacking the transaction announced by Canopy Growth today, from rights, options to exchangeable shares, a case for semantics only, and other puts and takes. And so you can pause to read. Well, we got a bit more here. CGC share count and Steez angle, revenue mix impact, while read across for other related stocks and sectors. So we got more on Acreage Holdings, more on TerraSend, and more on MSO Group. And so you can pause to read, but that MSO Group one I believe continues into this page. Then other Canadian LPs and Constellation Brands, while lastly valuation and price target. So you can pause to read. Well, there's one last breakdown of some figures here. Not exactly sure what this is relating to. But on top of that, some interesting news from the U.S. Securities Exchange, as today they charge Cronos Group, a Canadian LP, a NASDAQ-listed Toronto-based cannabis company, for improperly accounting for millions in revenue. And so, wow, this should be a big deal. But Betting Bruiser highlights that it's essentially a slap on the wrist. And this is very interesting to see a cannabis company getting a slap on the wrist much like any other company in the U.S. would. So we're kind of seeing cannabis treated like any other U.S. company, which is surprising, but I'd say we want to take this victory, as in agreeing to settle, the SEC determined that Cronos should not incur a financial penalty, giving its significant cooperation. So maybe this will make cannabis companies look good to the SEC, that, oh wow, they're willing to cooperate even more than some other companies in other industries. We don't know, but while this is interesting, more on the press release down below if you wanted to read, but Cronos did not, fuck up enough in order to incur a financial penalty. So it's a good sign, especially that the SEC is treating cannabis much like any other business and not actually fining them for breaking the rules, which they should, but regardless, a little win for cannabis there. And so with that, from Carl Quintanilla, sharing this Washington Post article. And so while there's a lot in this article just highlighting how most of Americans agree that we should end cannabis prohibition sooner than later, he's just highlighting 68% from one of the figures in this article, support for legalizing possession of small amounts of cannabis. And so why we should no longer criminalize people, why we should legalize and let states launch their own program so that people can buy legal cannabis to help offset the illicit market. Many positive reasons, but highlighting that 68% of Americans, and what can most Americans agree on at this point in time? Very little, but cannabis, yes, legalizing seems to be one of those few things. So more on the Washington Post article down below if you wanted to read it. But so with that comes the Dales report. Quite the turnaround in perceived support for which party will control the Senate after the midterm elections, according to PredictIt. Now, keep in mind, we have no idea, and this is just a poll, so take this with a grain of salt as well. But this dovetails with RCP polling, suggesting GOP, I imagine, could control 52 seats following November 8th voting, and turtle leadership inevitable in the Senate. Who will control the Senate after 2022 election? Now, keep in mind, no one knows, but this poll seems to believe that it's going to be the GOP, and we're going to see a red wave. And so we have no idea, but plan accordingly for own situation of what could happen. But with that, Jesse Redmond sharing what Cowen has to say on the probability of safe passing based on midterm election outcomes. And so again, take this with a grain of salt because we don't know, still just speculation, but figured it's worth sharing and be interesting, as we believe that passage of a narrow version of the SAFE Act is likely during the lame duck session, regardless of the outcome. Don't know about that. I do worry another Democratic sweep would essentially just give the Dems 2 more years of doing sweet fuck all while continuing to destroy America from the inside out while they blame everybody else. And while I digress, that is just my opinion. I do believe that a red wave is the best case scenario because that will force the current Dems' hand to get something done to save face from now until January, when the Republicans would take over if they sweep and win in November. And so with that, last few ones, this one from Dennis Rudiv sharing what Cowen has to say. If the government continues to delay the sector to go Fed legal, the sector may step forward to go Fed legal itself. Smart move by CGC, sort of highlighting that big money is like, you know what, fuck it, let's just make this push and see what we can get. And so you can pause to read the top bit, highlighting that Canopy is exercising its right to acquire 3 U.S. cannabis companies, even though cannabis remains federally illegal in the U.S. And so for a bit more on their view, you can pause to read as well. Otherwise, the full link will be below if you wanted to grab it. Well, we've got this one from Stifel on Canada and cannabis producers, but there is a lot on the U.S. in here as well. But I've basically got the entire 62-page write-up from Stifel. Not sure how I stumbled on this. Thank you, whoever shared this. But Q3 2022 preview is this time different. We may know before year end. And so a lot of key points, especially on the US, so I'd recommend reading this part at least. Keeping our market estimates unchanged as we see how New Jersey and Illinois rolls out. New Jersey SKU analysis unsurprisingly suggests TerraSend, Cureleaf, and Verano are clear leaders, with GTI surprising to upside. Reiterating our view of federal reform occurring within 2 years. Maryland on the 2022 ballot could open a 1.8 to 2.2 billion market at maturity, while Q3 earnings focuses on risk management, as we will get those in the next coming weeks. And so while it says Canada and cannabis producers, there's a lot on the US here. And so anyways, 62 pages from Stifel, if you wanted to grab the link below and read it. And so continue on with a few more. Dennis Rudiv, thank you for sharing another view from another broker, Piper Sandler, on the Canopy growth announcement. So again, trying to stay out of this with my opinions because I have no idea, but you can pause to read and gather from many different sources to come up with your own. Canopy Growth Corp listing may be at risk, but Canopy presses further into US THC because why wait? Let's try to force Congress's hand, because maybe that's going to finally get them to do their fucking jobs. And so you can pause to read a bit more on this one. While we move on to other stories, this one from MzBizDaily, highlighting that cannabis banking among reforms on the table in upcoming lame duck Congress. Now, we all know this, so just wanted to feature this snippet from Todd, but I'll put the link below if you wanted to read. But it does cover what I've been covering for the last year. The months ahead could be shaping up to be the most wonderful time of the year for the U.S. cannabis industry, although insiders warn legislative movement isn't a sure bet. It's a 50-50 chance, either yes or no, and while last year it was the same 50-50 chance, a year has passed, and problems have exacerbated that SAFE would solve. And so we just hope that Congress and Schmuck Schumer will do his job. But with that, an interesting development, as apparently Florida steps in to put kibosh on the Circle K cannabis plans. And so I found this on the 21st of October. Florida is pumping the brakes on plans to allow consumers to purchase cannabis at select gas stations. So, well, at least the press release made its rounds, as apparently the state's health department told the Washington Examiner that Florida has not approved the deal between Circle K and Green Thumb Industries. The cannabis company announced on Wednesday that it will sell medical cannabis products via space rented out from Circle K stores in Florida. According to a press release, this project has not been approved by the state, the department said. So, interesting. Florida has never approved a medical cannabis treatment center to operate out of a gas station. And so, obviously, it's going to take a long time before this even formulates, but it seems almost as if Circle K and Green Thumb just wanted to tell the world before they even told Florida. And so, as with all Rise dispensary locations in Florida, the opening of Rise Express stores remains subject to regulatory approval, and sales will be exclusively to Florida patients with a valid medical cannabis identification card, the spokesperson said. So they don't sound as mad about it, but it's going to take a lot of time, and hopefully Florida will come around to the great business opportunity and help normalize cannabis before they end up going full on adult use in 2024. Let's hope. But with that coming with this story out of New York, as Ben A. Smith, who writes for the Dales Report, shares this timely segment, the alarming segment as well, on the current lack of enforcement of adult-use cannabis dispensary sales in NYC. Many former street dealers, opportunists, are simply opening up shop without a license and staying open without penalty. Not ideal for MSOs spending millions going the legal route, and obviously not ideal as the regulators continue to delay launching this adult-use program, facilitating organized crime throughout the state of New York. And it's funny because that's what the Dems claim to be against, but you couldn't make this shit up. It's funnier than fiction, honestly.
We're not hiding anything.
Inside Big Chief at 3rd Avenue and 74th Street in the Brooklyn community of Bay Ridge, an up-close talk with the owners selling marijuana inside.
21 other ideas a must.
The store or dispensary, one of many across New York City, has been operating since August without a state license, at least not yet. The owners say they applied, but are waiting, as are many others, while the state is getting ready to send out approvals. Brooklyn City Council.
And that screams incompetence from the regulators, because it's been a year and a half now. There's absolutely no excuse. At least that's how I see it.
Member Justin Brennan says businesses already operating are part of a big problem.
These are just weed dealers who have rented a storefront. But the whole point of legalization is to have legal stores that are taxed.
Especially when they legalized in March 2021, over a year and a half ago. And so what the fuck is the holdup? There's no excuse anymore, especially from incompetent regulators, when we saw Arizona legalize November 2020 on the ballot and launch their adult use program 2 months after in January of 2021. So,
State Office of Cannabis Management spells out the rules tonight on Fox 5 in a statement.
Yeah, but you're a joke.
Simply put, you need a license to sell cannabis in New York. If you do not have one, you are not selling cannabis legally.
Yeah, we know.
The Office of Cannabis Management implores all illegal store operators, including stores pretending to be legal operations, to stop selling cannabis products immediately or risk facing additional consequences. We are actively working with local police and have jointly investigated unlicensed shops in their municipalities.
Enforcement, no.
But at this business, they say enforcement has never happened.
It's a classic sign of the Dems. All talk, but no actual action. And so just highlighting that New York could have been a phenomenal market, and it still has the potential, but it's really incompetent regulators getting in the way, trying to control it from the top down, as opposed to letting the industry flourish from the bottom up. And so, wanted to share this one from Bleacher Report, as to be expected, as Brittany Griner's appeal has been denied by a Russian court, which is very unfortunate, but what do you expect? Cannabis is not legal in Russia. You definitely don't want to go there bringing any sort of THC or cannabis product. So unfortunately, Griner will begin her 9-year prison sentence on drug charges, while the U.S. government has declared Griner wrongfully detained, but they just sound like dumbass hypocrites when the U.S. also detains people for cannabis themselves. And so until the U.S. reforms their own laws, they cannot claim the moral high ground in this situation, sadly. And so with that, some news from Germany, as we got this one from Bloomberg, updating from the draft we got last week that Germany to legalize purchases of up to 30 grams of cannabis, which is certainly an improvement from 20 grams as of what we were told last week. And so just wanted to share this article. That's basically all we got new out of this development, but we've also got another one from a German source, dw.com, as Lauterbach to outline cannabis legalization plan. So it seems like the draft has evolved a little bit, but main thing to highlight out of this one, so it's essentially just 2 different articles on a new Germany update, so you can grab the link below if you wanted to read through. But an adult would be allowed to carry 20 to 30 grams of cannabis for their own consumption. Details of the plan show, however, the legislative process could be a long one, and this is to be expected. We know this. Finish up the legislation, writing it in 2022, hopefully introduce it, debate it, and pass it in 2023 to launch an adult use program in 2024. This is nothing new. We've known this is going to be a long time, but there was a bit of information added to this article that we didn't get last week, and so you can grab the link below if you wanted to read the whole thing, but thank you, Connor, for pointing out this critical line. However, a specific bill will only be drafted after the EU has no legal objections to the planned legalization. And so either Germany has been laying the groundwork for the EU to approve this draft legislation and writing it in a way that they would have no legal objection, or it's possible Germany has not done that and we might see more obstacles along the way. We don't know. But then just to add to this, Marvin Kunzig, who I'm making an assumption, sounds like he's from the EU just based on his name. Translated, there won't be a drafted bill. And so that's obviously the bear take on this. The bull take could be that obviously Germany was aware of this, and so they laid the groundwork and spoke to the EU first so that they'd have no legal objections. But again, we don't know. Still a long ways out. Just wanted to share what we have thus far. And so last few stories, MzBizDaily highlighting that sales of infused pre-rolls light up Canadian cannabis market. And so I've tried a few of these pre-rolls with hash in it, like hash bats they call them, or there's a few other names. But just interesting to share infused pre-rolls gain in Canadian market, as joints with cannabis concentrates have made significant sales gains in Alberta, British Columbia, Ontario, and Saskatchewan. So good to see a new product in concentrate concept, helping drive more sales, as share of pre-roll sales have soared from September 2021 to 2.4%. Now in September 2022, 19.2%, up from 10.2% halfway through the year. And so sales of specialty pre-rolls infused with cannabis concentrates have blossomed in Canada's maturing adult use market as consumers embrace the high-potency, ready-to-smoke format. And the growth of infused pre-roll sales represents the most significant growth of any segment within the cannabis industry over the last year or two, even more than vapes, apparently, given that it is growing very quickly, and it is also very large, says Cooper Ashley, analytics manager with Seattle-based cannabis analytics firm Headset. And so more on the information down below if you wanted to pause to read. Otherwise, you can grab the whole link, but happy to highlight that as we do see Canadian cannabis sales in August did increase from July, actually, but it does show the slowest annual growth to date thus far this month. As Stats Canada released August retail sales for the country, with cannabis sales increasing from July by 0.2% to 393.7 million Canadian dollars, as July was revised from 394.8 million to 392.9 million, and the sales were up 13% from a year ago, down from the 17.2% July growth rate, as the growth was the lowest since legalization began month over month. But with that, happy to highlight that obviously the growth is continued to be driven by Ontario, although sales did fall in our most populated state to 153.8 million from 153.7. While our second most populated province, Quebec, home to 8 million Canadians, is unfortunately a backwards monopoly that refuses to open more than 60 legal dispensaries, and for that reason, their sales are flat across the board, because if you don't open more dispensaries to legally supply the demand of 8 million people in your province, then you're not going to combat the illicit market, and you're not going to see sales growth. And so while this might be nice for the few pockets that benefit from the government monopoly, it's not ideal for the citizens of Quebec who want more legal access to cannabis, and, obviously opening more legal access points would drive the prices down, making it better for the consumers of Quebec. So ridiculous, but that is where we sit there. And thankfully, though, we do have Alberta and British Columbia to offset Quebec's stupidity. In Alberta, one of the states to, from the beginning, go with a private model and open as many dispensaries as possible, allowing their citizens to get in on the opportunity. We saw them fall from 69.2 million to 67.3 million, but most of the growth was driven by British Columbia seeing a big jump from 57.2 million up to 62.9 million, and I do believe that's because they introduced delivery and more opening of legal dispensary outlets as well to help elicit with the black market. So more on here if you wanted to pause to read, but that is an update out of Canada, and that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I'll catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great week, everybody.